Good evening. We are going to call the Novi Board of Education regular meeting to order. Tonight is January 11th, and if you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a motion for approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Support. Recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Our first agenda item is celebrations. I'm wondering if any of the board members have celebrations. We'll have an opportunity for board communication later, but any specific celebrations that you would like to share? Okay.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. That sounds like a great one, Jason. Although I feel like I've said Happy New Year a lot, and it's already January 11th. I can't believe it. I started thinking about that on the way here. We are going to move into election of officers. And every year, our first meeting, we do an organizational meeting. We do a work session in December to discuss election of officers and committee positions and just get the board organized for the upcoming year. So you'll see a worksheet in your packet, and then we will have an opportunity for motions and recommendations for each board position. So we will first start with recommendation for the president. If we have anyone who would like to share what we discussed at our last meeting, that would be great.
I'll do it.
Okay, Mrs. Bodwin.
Would you like me to just make an actual nomination?
Yes, I just like read the recommendation with our person's name in it.
Wonderful. Let me pull up the page then.
Would you like to use my?
I've got. Okay. The Novi Board of Education, or I recommend that the Novi Board of Education elect Paul Cook as the president of the Novi Community School District Board of Education for the 2024 calendar year. So be it resolved by roll call vote.
Thank you. Do we have a
Support.
recommended by Mrs. Bodwine and supported by Mr. Smith? Do we have any comments before we take a roll call vote?
Sure. I'm going to go again. I would just like to thank you, Dr. Ruskin, for your service and leadership. This past year being my first on this board, it has been very nice to have your help with all that. And so thank you for everything, and I'm very excited about seeing what this next year will bring with Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Alrighty, any other comments? I'm going to make a comment. I would just like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to serve for the last 4 years as the president of this board. It's been ups and downs during some of the most challenging years. Mr. Cook shared at our work session that he, after 9 years of serving on this board, would love the opportunity to serve as this board's president, and I fully support him, and I look forward to a really great year. So as a person who loves to collaborate and bring this team together, I think it's wonderful to share your interests and desires and to have the support of your colleagues. So I will be supporting Mr. Cook. Any other comments? Mr. Mena?
As you know, I've been on this board for 9 years, and prior to that, I've been following school board issues for probably a good 10 years before that. So I've known most of the board members who have been on this board for the past 20 years. And I say without hesitation, you've been the best leader that we've had in all those years. The board, I think, has run smoothly. You've dealt with a lot of bumps in the roads, very professionally, and yeah, I'm glad, obviously, you're not leaving because you're leaving the board, but I do mean that sincerely. You're easily the best president that has ever run the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Mena.
Yeah, you're not done. You still have time on the board. You may be back.
Yes, I agree. We are a team of 7, and these officer positions hold a little more responsibility and work, but every person on this board serves equally. So I am not going anywhere, and I'm here to help Mr. Cook and offer my my advice, whether he wants it or not. Alrighty. So seeing no other comments, if we can do a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, that would be great.
Trustee Bodwine?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Mishner?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We can either trade spaces and you, or I can just keep on rolling.
You just keep on rolling.
I'll
until we
keep
get to
on
the
rolling.
officers, right?
Okay. So we're gonna do a recommendation for vice president, and if someone would like to make a motion, that would be great. Mr. Cook?
Thank you. I recommend that Novi Board of Education elects Danielle Ruskin as the Vice President of the Novi Community School District Board of Education for the 2024 calendar year.
Support?
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. Any comments?
You said you're not going too far.
Alrighty. Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Bodwine?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Mishner?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We will move on to recommendation for the secretary. If I can get a motion, please. Mrs. Roney?
That the Novi Board of Ed elects Willie Minna as the secretary of the Novi Community School District Board of Ed for the 2024 calendar year.
Do we have support?
I support.
Recommended by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mr. Smith. Any comments or questions? Okay. I think that we had a really nice dialogue around who would serve at the last work session, and Mr. Mena so graciously offered to do this role as he has in the past, and you know, all his fellow trustees there supported him, so I look forward to a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Bodwine?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Mishner?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to recommendation for the treasurer. May I get a motion? Mr. Mena?
I recommend Trustee Mary Ann Roney for the treasurer position.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mr. Cook. Any comments or questions in this regard? Yes, Mrs. Bodwine.
Thank you for continuing to do this. I'm very excited to not take that job. So thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Kling. He's
I
like,
like
what's
you."
wrong with the finance
You're
department?
delightful. It's all of the spreadsheets that I'd like to avoid, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Roney, for your willingness to serve and the learning that you've done this year, and I look forward to you continuing that service.
Thank you.
And any other comments or questions? Seeing none, if we can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena?
Trustee Bodwine?
Yes.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Mishner?
Yes.
Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We are now on to the awkward part of our meeting, so we'll get up and change our seats around, and then we will continue on with the meeting.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. I can easily sit on the other side of you.
Oh, that's right. Take your nameplate too, huh?
You take your name badge and get out of here.
Paul wanted to add president below his name. Is that a Sheila thing?
I just think I might be at the wrong table.
can't
That would
break
just
my
make
mug.
it more fun over there. What's in your cup, sir?
Okay, ready to continue? Okay, we have reached comments from the audience. The board respectfully requests that any individual wishing to speak to the board provide their name, address, and any organization that they represent. Keep their comments to the allotted time and refrain from directing comments to individual members of the board, district employees, or members of the audience. Do we have any community members that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. In our consent agenda, we have approval of minutes and approval of field trips. This is where, Mr.
I
No.
move, I move that we approve consent items A and B as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Roney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Move on to information discussion. The first item, new course offerings at NHS. Mr. Micah.
All righty, thank you. We are excited about the opportunity, usually this time of year, as we start to prepare, believe it or not, for next year, and the courses that we might offer at our various respective buildings. You know, over the course of the last year, there has not been a lot of change in that department, and we're continuing with that trajectory right now. We have a lot of things that we've committed to with our staff and trying to make sure that there's not a lot of change going on as a real priority for us. But we do have some courses that we're real excited about bringing forward tonight, particularly at the high school. And so I'm going to let Mr. Geremini introduce those and discuss those tonight for the board.
Thank you, Mr. Micah. As Mr. Micah indicated, these are courses that are really targeted at providing additional student supports and opportunities, not adding a lot of things to what we're doing, and continuing projects that we've already begun. And so the first course, I should say that we did discuss 2 of these at our curriculum committee meeting of the whole in December. And so we had a preview of those and an opportunity to check these out. The first one is Math Mentors. At the high school, we have a very successful program called Writing Den. It provides students an opportunity to earn English credit while supporting their peers in developing their writing skills. This is an analogous program in mathematics. So this program would be run by our intervention team in math at the high school, and students would have the opportunity to provide support to peers in mathematics. So we know that sometimes students have an opportunity to learn better from their peers. They have a more trusting relationship sometimes with their peers, or a more comfortable relationship with their peers at times, or sometimes kids just explain things in different ways. And so this provides students that opportunity to support their peers. Lost where that sentence was going, sorry, I've been sick all week, so my brain is a little bit off tonight. And so that's the first course. The second course that we are presenting for information and discussion tonight is Writing for Publication. One of the things that we observed at the high school over the past few years is declining enrollment in yearbook and declining enrollment in the journalism class. Well, we really want to make sure that we are able to support a yearbook. That's an important tradition, an important thing that we want to have. And we think that the journalism experience and writing in that way is an important skill set for kids to develop. And so the teachers had the idea to sort of combine the courses and provide a blended experience to increase enrollment and allow us to make sure that we can still run the class in a fiduciarily responsible way. Saying that for Mr. Kling over here. So we're hopeful that this experience, blended experience, will provide students the opportunities that they need and still provide us the ability to generate yearbooks and other publications at the school level. And then the third course is a continuation of the Cat Lab experience, that project that we have been working on at the high school for a couple of years now, building that new facility. And we've already started outfitting it. In fact, I think some of the unboxing started yesterday for some of the materials, if I'm not mistaken. But we obviously need to have course curriculum in place for next year to be able to run and take advantage of that space. And so the first experience that we're able to provide in that space is a course called Mechatronics. Mechatronics is a CTE, Career Technical Education program, supported by the state of Michigan. And so they provide the standards, or what they call the core competencies, that decide what needs to be taught in those experiences. Our new teacher, Travis Baylog, and Mr. Phil Scavo have been working on developing this course over the past few months, and they're continuing developing additional opportunities, but this is the first one that we're going to be able to offer. Mechatronics is really a blend of multiple areas, inclusive of robotics and engineering principles, and so they've designed this experience to provide students the opportunity to complete the mechatronics sequence in a one-year sequence. That's a great thing, not to get into the weeds too much here, but with CTE programming, when you have students enrolled in state-approved CTE programs, they have the opportunity to earn certifications and different credentials. And as they go through those experiences, if they participate in those CTE programs, that's great. And then if they complete those programs, that's great. And if they come back and revisit those programs in some way, like take those again as another experience, it's even better because there's a funding model from the state that actually supports this. And that'll actually help us to offset the cost of maintaining these programs and spaces. So We're pretty excited about all three of these. I'm happy to try to answer some questions. I know that my good friend, Mr. Cohn, Director of Curriculum, is on his way, but I failed to communicate to my friend that meetings start at 6, not at 7. The theme you're noticing
The theme.
with this wonderful change.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Any board questions? Mr. Mena?
Thank you. And this is more of a general course catalog question. I think we had discussed it at the committee meeting, but I don't think, I can't remember if the mechatronics was part of that last meeting, although
It was
obviously I
not.
knew it was coming. And something I brought up in the past, we have requests for new classes coming from time to time, many over the years. We certainly hear when new classes are added. We never really hear whether or not any classes are removed. Certainly, I'm supportive of new experiences, and obviously we have to offer different classes as times change, but at some point, does our course catalog and the number of choices that students have become so large that we start watering down things, watering down the schedule? Meaning, is it possible as we add more classes, we have students, maybe you get 10 students who really want one class, but because we have so many other choices, now you're kind of splitting students into different classes, and now those 10 kids may not have the opportunity to take that class they want. So we're just wondering if you can speak to that and what we're doing in order to avoid that from happening.
So, yes, that absolutely can occur, does occur. So students express interest in a particular course, but we only run the courses that students want to take. The dilemma becomes when you have 10 students or 8 students or 6 students who have interest in a course, and we really can't run that course, right? It doesn't make sense for us to assign a full-time teacher to teach that class. So then that class doesn't run, and so those students lose out on that opportunity that they were interested in. It's a double-edged sword, so if that course, for example, was removed from the course catalog because it hadn't run in a few years, the students wouldn't even have thought to have taken the opportunity, and maybe we might have picked something else and never had that disappointment. But it is a challenge, right? So I don't think that there's a perfect answer. We've talked about the possibility of doing a whole course catalog audit and kind of going through and examining what courses have run over the last few years, what courses have run in the last 10 years, and if courses aren't running, then looking at a process to perhaps remove those from offerings.
Yeah. And then the second part to that question is, I never hear any feedback. Like a lot of times we add classes and we never, I mean, I'm the kind of person, let's try it out and see how it works. But we never really get feedback. And again, I remember adding a math class that was sports statistic related at some point. But we had a teacher who was off, who came up with the idea, actually come and present it to us. I have no idea if that course still runs, but it would be kind of nice to know. It would be nice to know to see whether or not, which classes we've added have become successful, which ones aren't.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I'm trying to think, I'm thinking on the spot right now about the best way to represent that for you.
I'm not looking to add, a lot more work, but,
No,
and it's not
no.
anything I need to, but it's kind of been a request of ours for quite some time, and I worry sometimes that we add more and more classes that we're putting a lot of stress also on the whole scheduling process as well, so.
We can definitely look at that, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
I'm excited to see the mechatronics course. I'm not familiar with Mr. Balo, but I understand he's newer to the program, and I'm happy to see that we're offering that. I know we've talked as a board about offering coursework and the ability for some of our students that may not want to pursue the traditional four-year college education and actually come out of high school and be trained and certified and able to go and start working immediately. My question is it on, whether it's our radar as a board or on yours or on Devin's, that with these new courses and newer kids or more kids that might want to take advantage of this amazing space that we now have, is there money in our budget for new welding machines to replace the ones that haven't been replaced in 22 years? Is that, out there somewhere that with these new courses and with this new space, we might need to invest more to upgrade our equipment so that we're not trying to teach kids how to get certified on equipment that's 22 years old.
Well, that's the one nice part about the mechatronics course, is it's being taught in a space with all new equipment,
Right.
new experiences, and it provides us the opportunity then to look at master planning and make some decisions about things that might need to be included in future bond issues or anything like that.
Okay, so that's on our radar, it's just, I know for this particular course in a brand-new space, it wouldn't come up, but I'm familiar with the space, and I'm familiar with some of the equipment, and some of it is outdated. So, okay, thanks, I'm looking forward to it.
Mr. Michner?
Yeah, so first I appreciate the creative, proactive problem-solving approach to the yearbook and the school newspaper approach. It kind of seems like it's right along with Trustee Mena's thinking of, how do we address low enrollment classes but still provide students with the courses they like? So, I appreciate you guys proactively trying to manage that and keep those classes running. For the mechatronics class, I think that's fantastic. I was looking through the actual course requirements and content, and some of that stuff, as a engineer, I didn't experience for the first time until I was a sophomore, junior in college. So the CNC programming, knowing how to do the lathe, the robotics, that's sophomore, junior level stuff, at least it was when I was in college. So to see us bringing that kind of stuff into the high school is really encouraging. It's gonna give our students a jump, and I think it speaks to how the technical skill set track is not that divergent from what we would traditionally think of professional engineering type education. I could see it working well for both students interested in either vocational or engineering work. So I really even like how they have to look at sensors and the actuators and the controls. So that is excellent. I was curious, you did mention certification as part of it. Is that part of the new MySTEM programming coming from the state? Is that tied into, or are we getting funding? Is that the funding you mentioned?
It's not from MySTEM, no, this would be CTE added cost funding that I was referencing.
Okay,
So any of our CTE approved programs, so I think we have marketing and we have finance, those programs currently would receive funding based on student participation, student completion, and student continuing in the program later. And this would be the same kind of thing, so it's state level, associated with, I can't think, Perkins.
okay.
And to just double down on that, the difficulty sometimes in getting CTE funds is that you have to keep up your career endorsed diploma, right? And so, in order to be able to do that, you've gotta have a certain number of years in the industry in order to be able to teach that course and so on and so forth, while still being a certified teacher. So, because of the challenges of that, a lot of local schools have kind of let that go. And then that has gone to the oftentimes the ISD. So we certainly do take advantage, if you think about our tech center, where a lot of our students do have access to go to the Oakland Schools Tech Center. There's 4 of those locations that offer various different types of programs. What we're trying to do here is bring some of that back in-house, so our kids don't even have to travel to be able to have access to that. But obviously, those types of programs require substantial amounts of cost, even for the materials to run them.
Right.
And so when we take on those types of programs, we get those added cost dollars, as Mr. Jeremini's talking about. But it is a lot of work to make sure that we're keeping up the certifications. And then we also have to make sure that students are actually completing those courses. So it's not just about the fact that you ran them, you actually have to then audit how many of the kids actually completed the course, were successful in the course, and all of those types of things. So it's an exciting opportunity because we're still gonna have a strong partnership with our tech centers, because they're gonna be able to do some things that would probably make more sense for them to do those. But as we can, finding those areas, and I think there's gonna be a future conversation around healthcare and engineering and some of our other more technical careers that a lot of our students are interested in. And it's, by the way, it doesn't necessarily, as Trustee Smith said, have to be, I'm going to a 4-year medical school or something like that, but it might be, I wanna be an EMT, or I wanna be a mechanic, or I wanna do those things. And so being able to offer some of those certifications here at the local building level is a really exciting vision. So something that kind of ties into some of our conversations that we've had around strategic planning, But the funding is, you gotta have money to do anything that we're talking about, and so the CTE added cost dollars, as he was describing, is part of what we're trying to make sure we can capture, and that's the planning and the preparation that we're doing right now.
All right. Yeah, it's a fantastic program, and the last point I wanted to say is the math mentors. I thought that's a very innovative program, because I've always felt if you can teach something, then you've really mastered the material. And I was curious though, kind of in the same vein as the mechatronics class, is there any opportunity with math mentors and its partner, the Writing Den, for students that successfully complete that to have some kind of credit in the line of thought of kind of grow your own? We've talked a lot about on the board, programs that would encourage our Novi High School students to go on into a path of education. Since this is kind of in the teaching vein and they're working directly with MTSS trained educators, is there a way that we could maybe collect or get some certification for those students that successfully complete those in education credits? If they enroll in an education degree field, they would have less student teaching hours or something of that, something creative maybe that we could look into and partner with, our institutions of higher learning to see if they would give our students some kind of credit for a program like that.
So it would certainly assist with an application, right? Like, first thing I can say is that kind of experience, if a student is interested in an education program at a university, it'll definitely support their application. As they're currently designed, it doesn't quite fit the CTE programming for child development and for becoming a teacher. But that's something that we've actually talked about along with some of the programs that Mr. Micah mentioned. So it's just one of those, like, do we do everything at once, or do we stagger that out and gauge interest and go through that process?
That's encouraging to hear you thought about that. And it sounds like Superintendent Micah, that Trustee Mena would be interested in including class enrollment in our future data dashboards that
Yeah.
are coming.
I think so. It sounds like that anyway.
Any other comments?
Well, yeah.
Ms.
Oh.
Burgoyne?
So I just had a quick question on the math mentors, which I think sounds like an awesome program, but is there like a certain level of math that our students would have completed before they would be eligible to participate as a mentor, or
So
how
they'll
does
at
that
least
work?
have completed Algebra 2
Okay,
with a grade of B or higher.
okay, so
So there
there's,
is a course prereq, yeah.
okay, cool, I was just kind of wondering how that would go. I think this, and does this then count, I think it says here, but that for the mentors get a credit for a math class as well
Yes.
then? So this might be a great option as some of our kids are on that trajectory with the advanced math and the really high pressure, and then maybe, okay, this year I need to slow it down a little, this might be a really good option for that
Could
as
be,
well.
or it could be an elective for them if they want to take something like
If they wanna take all the
at the
math,
same time.
they could
If
take
they
all
wanna
the
take all the
math.
maths.
Yep, so I think that could be, beneficial in a lot of ways, depending on the needs of individual students, so thank you, I think it's a great idea.
I'm good.
Mr. Mena, you had another question?
Yeah, and I just want to loop back and paraphrase and make sure I understand. We talked about this, and I just want to make sure I understand. So regarding mechatronics and getting state CTE funding, that won't happen because you can't get somebody certified. Because it's almost impossible.
No, actually, we're fortunate to have Mr. Balo, who we've hired, is certified.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
That's the
but
part I missed.
what there is a bit of a I'll call it a gap or a lead time gap, because we have to actually build out the program. So this is gonna be the first in a series of courses that are gonna be tied to that type of a program, right? So in the future, and I don't wanna even speculate what the titles might be, but there'll be some sort of an advance, there's a next level, and then there's probably a level after that. And so what you start to do is, in the CTE world, you start to chart your completers of these programs, right? How far do they go within there? And so the funding starts to come later as you have kids that are going through the
But none of
program.
that could happen unless you have somebody teaching.
That's
who has
exactly right.
certification, which is almost impossible to
It
do.
is, so it's fortunate that we were able to hire somebody that does have it, yeah.
And then, again, going back to actual certification for students, okay? So the equipment that we're getting, I believe, is from FANUC, right? And FANUC themselves offers some sort of certification. How difficult, or is there any plans to try to allow our students to obtain that certification? Okay,
Yes, part of our intended curriculum here is that students will be able to achieve certain FANIC certifications.
okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? I really appreciate the math mentors. We have really talked over the years about kids that are on that advanced path and get to their senior year and they still have to take another math class, but they may not be ready for the next one, or, you know, may not be needing the next one, and this gives them an opportunity to get that senior year of math in. The mechatronics, walked by the lab here about an hour ago, and it is looking better and better each day. It's great that you can see it from both the outside and the inside, and it's maybe a fishbowl, but I think it's gonna be with that prize fish in there. And the writing for publications, the creative way we've resolved participation in a couple of classes is great. I would like to see eventually, and I've talked to Mr. Menke about this a couple of times, is potentially looking at a technical writing course for those kids in the mechatronics that are not necessarily going into a field where they need the creative or the journalistic type writing. So I appreciate all these courses as the next step into a better future and more offerings for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? And seeing none, let's move on to the Meadows Playground discussion. Mr. Menke.
Great. So obviously, as you know, this year we are very heavily steeped in construction at the Meadows facility. It's pretty awesome that we have some of our Meadows staff here today to visit with us. You know, lots of growing pains going on with, you know, specifically the fifth grade teachers teaching in that space, and, you know, figuring out how to make it work for, you know, their students and the different classes that they offer. But one of the other challenges is obviously, as we're in phase 2 construction on the back side of the building, is the fact that currently our students don't have access to a full playground. I will say that there's a very big difference I've observed in the way that fifth graders use a playground versus the way sixth graders use a playground, and there's a big difference even between how fifth graders use a playground and how an elementary K4 student would use a playground. But it is gonna be exciting to be able to build back the playground that obviously had to come down as a result of phase 2 construction. One of the things that I think is gonna be a little unique about this playground, something that we've talked about even when we did the Village Oaks playground, was really trying to be inclusive. And I know that, you know, Mr. Cook has talked a lot about, you know, making sure that our, you know, students who have a disability still have the ability to get on those playgrounds and do those things. So I think a lot of our playgrounds historically have been, you know, mulch, and that is something that I think over the course of time we'll want to talk about at the CPC committee and really look at how do we make our playgrounds more inclusive. So while we're building a new playground, it is costly, but it's probably the opportunity to do that. So what you're gonna see in this particular model and mock-up, and I will say this is for information discussion, the staff at Meadows has started to kind of weigh in on this. I think there's gonna be a few tweaks that they have some suggestions for. So there'll be some additions or subtractions or modifications as we look at this next week. But one of the big things is gonna be the surfacing. So if you can imagine that the playground itself is gonna have, it's difficult to describe it, it's kind of a solid surface, but it's a squishy rubber, right? So if you were in a wheelchair or on a scooter, you would be able to actually get out onto the playground to use the equipment. Additionally, a lot of the area will be turfed so that it's a little bit easier for, again, somebody to be able to wheel themselves out into that area. See, it's a nice opportunity. We've got, you know, pictures of swings and all of those types of things. The program itself is gonna be mostly purchased off of competitive contract. So the nice thing about that is, through Sourcewell and some of our other contracts, we're able to get pricing that's already been competitively bid. So the state allows us to do that, and then it allows us to really get kind of the equipment that we need and we're looking for. So obviously, Pentura is our designer. They're a group that we contract with that does playgrounds. So it's a combination of starting with them and they give us kind of a rough idea. Our staff have an opportunity to weigh in on that, and then obviously you have an opportunity to look at this as well. But these implements or these different pieces of equipment are rated for the age group of students that go to Meadows, and that's another factor. So for example, while it sounds odd, this equipment would not be rated for, say, a first grade or kindergarten student to use. They actually have certified people that come out and they, go through and look at all the equipment and make sure that it's there. So, this is an exciting project. We're excited to, get it off the ground. The one thing that we're doing and why we're bringing it forward a little bit quicker than maybe we would have in years past is because we've noticed that the lead time on a lot of this equipment is longer than what you might expect. And so we do not want to be in a situation next year where our students come back in the fall and we still don't have that. And so we've lived through that, I think, in the districts already. So we're just really trying to get a little bit of ahead of the game. So even though it seems premature, because this won't even be installed until the summertime, we just want to make sure we get that order in pretty quickly. So the staff I know have some suggested changes. I know that there's some things that they saw that they would just recommend. Obviously, it'll be slightly modified when you see it next week, but this is just kind of a general, opportunity for you to see that. And then I'll answer any questions that I can, and then if there's questions that are outside of that, I can get those answers for next week, or even have somebody from the company come if needed. Any questions?
Mr. Commissioner.
So I recognize the one area, it looks like that fitness, like physical challenge.
Yep.
Area, that looks like it's very similar to what's at Village Oaks, yeah. And a lot of the other equipment, it looks like it's a similar layout and format to, what the city recently put in the last couple of years by the softball, baseball diamond quad. So it'll have that kind of accessibility.
Very
aspect
much.
to it.
Yep, very much, and it will, as I said before, the one of the bigger costs of doing these playgrounds, actually the largest chunk of cost is the excavation and then the surface material that you put in. So you're effectively doubling the cost versus, say, using wood mulch, which is an approved, substrate. The one thing that is nice is that I have to get the exact specs, but I think it's 20 years that you get almost a warranty for this rubber material, this new technology that they have. And so if you think about what is 20 years worth of spraying new wood chips in there, it probably is eventually, a better value actually. But more importantly than that, it allows somebody that couldn't otherwise get out onto the playground, if they're in a wheelchair or something like that, it allows for that to happen. So it will have that accessibility. There are also some implements here that specifically would allow a student in a wheelchair to be able to access as well. And so as we think about our other playgrounds, at the other elementary schools, like Village Oaks, being able to create some of those spaces where there's inclusive areas where kids can have more accessibility to use the space.
It definitely seems like a smart use of bond funds because, as you mentioned, the wood chips for playgrounds are special. Like you can't just put regular wood chips
Correct.
down and they're
Yep.
more expensive, so that comes out of the general fund and now it won't have to anymore, so.
Yep.
I agree with that direction as well. My only other question is so we're gonna, this will come before the board, I'm assuming, next month for approval, and then we'll place the order. When are you expecting to actually start on construction in this? Does this happen after the school year finishes?
Yeah, so it'll actually come before you next week, just because of the fact that's why I was alluding to the fact that we wanna get an order in soon. And so that's really to address the lead time of a lot of this specialized equipment. However, we won't actually start the excavation and construction of this until probably June. So that's obviously pushing out into the summer, so you won't see any of that until that time. And a large portion of that is because there are required setbacks based on the height of phase 2 of the Meadows building that have to be achieved. And so when you think about the safety, which is actually like an aluminum fence, really, that's out at the site right now, the code requires that we have a certain setback of that fence based on the height of the building for fall zones and things like that. So it is an active construction space, which is why we've very creatively, and I say we, I mean the building administration and the construction team have come out with a way to get students still out for recess, and they have purchased equipment and there's things for the kids to do. But certainly, you know, we couldn't really start this while school's in session because you have to maintain that safety zone when you're gonna have students that are gonna be going out,
That makes
you know,
sense.
for recess.
And is there also gonna be an open area too, like in?
Yep, it's not shown here. Maybe what I could do for next week is get a kind of a site plan for that area, but there is quite a bit of green space at that facility, that we'll maintain. So there'll be, you know, space for kids to run around, throw the football. Quite frankly, a lot of the sixth grade kids, when I go to see recess, they just like to stand like in a huddle and hang out. You know, that's their recess, so that's fine too. So there is gonna be some green space for that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Benoit?
Thank you. So at Village Oaks, this does look actually very similar to a lot of the equipment there that I know the kids have been enjoying. And I also think looking at it, it does look like the kind of playground you could take big kids to and they would still have a great time with this. So I really think the maturity level seems there. My only question, and I think I may have mentioned this to you at some point, I'm not super sure what it's called, the thing that's kind of like a little spider wall for the kids to climb up. It's like that, kind of like Ninja Warrior kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's a slanted kind of
So it like
tunnel.
does this and
Yeah.
then they can climb up it.
Mm-hmm.
At Village Oaks, and I don't know if this is still the case, but when they first got this, I was told nobody could really climb it, and it might be because there was wood chips under it and their feet were dirty. But it was like not terribly usable, and I haven't checked to see if that's still the case, but we should check and see if that equipment is being.
Is this the half wall thing or the $100,000
It's the.
spider web, please?
So you know
The
where
V?
they jump up and they do their hands and their feet like out to
Yeah,
catch
the wall,
themselves?
yeah.
Yes, and one
I know
of
that from my
my
ninja training.
one of my children who can do that in a doorway cannot do it on this wall, and so that's why like I would like us to check that to make sure that's usable
I think
for
it's,
kids.
I think it's a great question, and I will ask, and I'll have an answer for our meeting next week.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I know, there's two possibilities. One, to your point, it might be that it's dusty because of the wood chips.
Mm-hmm.
Another might be that at Village Oaks, they needed to build them a little closer because the kids are younger. You know, if you had longer legs, you know, it might be possible. I don't know that, but I'll get that answer and then we can talk about it next week.
Yeah,
too.
my thought is it's either the like dust from wood chips or just what that surface is actually made of.
Too slippery.
Or it could be fine now that the weather has gotten to it, or, you know, so I'm not sure, but I just would like you to maybe inquire with, Mrs. Dinkelman about how that is going there. But aside from that, I think it looks great. My only other question, I guess, is, have we gotten an estimate of how many students they think can use this equipment? Like, do we know an occupancy for it?
Yes, they do run those calculations and I will inquire about that.
Okay.
The one thing that's gonna be interesting next year, the Meadows staff right now, they have committees. And there's a committee that's dealing with scheduling, and one of the things that they're tasked with is, for the first time, that building will actually be able to have, obviously they're all gonna be together, but they're gonna be able to have lunches with many more kids in a lunchroom that's much bigger than they've been able to do in the past. And so that's gonna open up quite a few possibilities for them scheduling wise. So I'm excited to hear, I know Mike's gonna hear from them as well on some suggestions on how they're gonna do that. But the number of kids obviously that are out at recess is gonna be predicated potentially on a larger number of kids that could be out at one time. So I will see what they have it rated for and I'll have that answer for next week too.
Okay, if there's, you know, depending on how much money we have available for this project, I think from what I know of bigger kids, more of like the monkey bar strength training, can you climb here, I can do this kind of play stuff seems to be what gets used a lot with the older kids. So if there's not a high occupancy on here, even adding more to that fitness area to expand that and have that part be more usable for more kids, because I think that is an area that I could see a lot of them, you know, testing their skills at. So that's it for me, thank you.
Any other questions? I really appreciate getting the accessibility and doing the turf instead of the wood chips and the likes of that. The concern I have, and it may show up in the site plan, is right now we have a single basketball court. And that has historically been overcrowded and overrun during lunchtime. So now that we're putting a second grade level in there, is there a way to, you know, double or even triple that basketball court? A hard surface that the kids can go out and bounce a ball and shoot some hoops on, so. And that was missing out of this. But other than that, I really appreciate that we are looking at all abilities and all accessibility issues that we have not been able to do in the past, so. Appreciate that. No other questions? Let's move on to the kindergarten programming discussion.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've had the opportunity over the course of the last couple months. We have actually established an in-district staff kindergarten task force. And this came really from the listening tours. We had the opportunity to go around, as you know, and talk with our staff, and you know, you hear about some of the challenges that they're facing and some of the things that they're asking about. And one of the things that became abundantly clear, especially as we talked with the elementary staff, was the fact that a lot of the children that seem to be struggling within our school district at the elementary level, you can trace that back to the fact that they probably just were not ready to go to kindergarten, but we sent them to kindergarten anyway because whether it was necessity, childcare, you know, any variety of reasons. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes when students are falling within that waiver window, so to be clear, there's a waiver period in the state of Michigan that students after the birth date of September 1st, all the way to December 1st, if they fall into that range, you know, they can start school. They have to complete a waiver, which gets approved at by the district, which ultimately goes to the state. But we're setting up a little bit of a dynamic in our kindergarten classrooms where I might have children that are ready for kindergarten, 5-year-olds, and they're going in there. And we're then also, adding in 4-year-olds that may just, quite frankly, not be ready. And it's usually not even the academic things, it's the social emotional pieces. Am I ready to learn about sharing? Am I ready to do a lot of those things? And so the kindergarten standards do cover those materials, but being able to find a way to support kids who are in that waiver period in a way that's a little bit different is a real task. And so we've been meeting with this group. We have 2 kindergarten teachers from every building that are on the task force. We have membership from ELD, obviously Mr. Geremini, Dr. Carino's on the committee. We also have representatives from special education as well as the ECEC. And so it's a really nice team. And we are meeting again next week. And I want to put this on your radar because there's the possibility that as soon as this coming fall, that we might be able to offer something like this. I want to talk about some of the logistics around there. So first, I'm going to talk about the kindergarten programming itself and having a program for, early kindergarten. And then I'll also talk about another idea that we're, kind of batting around. So the first on the programming itself, we currently offer a early 5s program at the ECEC. It's tuition based, which means that we charge a fee for that. Some of our families, and it usually fills up, we have people that do invest in the course. Some of our families, though, may not have access to it, whether the course closes for space or it's a financial burden. And so if we could create a course that was actually free, it would allow children that fall within this waiver period to be able to come to us, and then we'd also be able to then open up the opportunity for parents to self-select that. And I would be an example of a parent that did that, right? So My son, we wanted him to have a little bit of an additional experience. He just wasn't ready for kindergarten. We put him into a program in the district where he goes, and it has been one of the best decisions we've made for him academically and educationally. So, that growth year, I find when we work with parents, they never come back and say, I'm really disappointed that my child had that opportunity. It's almost always a real positive thing. And the teachers are really crying out for this. They're saying this is gonna be a game changer because we see it all the way through school. Once they're not ready for school and we force them to start school, there's nothing wrong with the child. There's nothing developmentally inappropriate with the child. It's just they weren't quite ready for kindergarten. So giving them that opportunity, making it so that it's free and that parents don't have to pay for it is an amazing thing. So that is something that we're looking at. A couple things that it relate to the board with relation to that deals with our policy 5302. So this is a policy that you're aware of. I'm just gonna pass that around. One of the things that we would, depending on where this goes with the task force, and I'll have more information next week, it could result in the potential of a policy change, which would essentially allow us to say, look, for students whose birthdays fall within that waiver window, we're going to enroll them into this program, right? We're enrolling them into this early kindergarten program. And then we would then, from there, build an administrative guideline that would show we could also then open it up for volunteers. So we might say, okay, if your child's birthday is in August and you would like to have access to this, you can sign up and enter, that fray. So I'm excited about the possibility of this because I know how much our teachers, particularly at the elementary level, are asking for it. And I think it's a great offering to our community because right now, parents are left with fewer choices. They're either gonna have to pay to send them to the, childcare program, the early fives program, or they're going to have to send them to school, even though they might not be wanting to send them to school yet, or they're gonna have to pay for something else and they may not be able to afford it. So I think this is an opportunity that we can provide our community and our families. I think it's good for our kids, it's developmentally appropriate. And so we're excited to be working with this group. So I'll have more information from the task force reporting out next week. I also want to talk just a little bit about something that's a little bit of a different thing, and that is, regardless of the kindergarten programming, when we sit down to build schedules at the elementary level, all the way through really pretty much Meadows, we know our students. So when we talk about the third grade classrooms within our buildings, we know our students as second graders and where we're going to best place them so that we have a really nice mix of students and that the classes are balanced, right? Well, one of the challenges that we have in kindergarten is that we don't know our students at all really before they start. And so the task force is working on some kind of outside the box thinking on what we might do for our little ones when they come to us for the first time to really get to know them better so that we can place them in a more balanced way like we do our other grade levels. And so this is really attending to a lot of the needs that we've seen, particularly this year and over the previous years at those levels. So excited about the work they're doing. I want to make sure I'm bringing that up for you as a board to be aware of. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have tonight.
Mr. Mitchell.
So, Superintendent Micah, I'd love to hear, when your advisory committee comes to present in more detail, how this early fives program would slot with what's currently offered at the ECEC and our kindergarten. And just to understand if there's overlap, and if so, what that is, or if it fits very neatly into that, just how it kind of fits what's already available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would be happy to have them share about that. I think to get to just one quick part of what the question is, in the event that we would be offering a program like that of some sort, it would be most likely that we would not offer that at the ECEC because we would be essentially replicating a program and then asking someone to pay for it when we could offer that to them for free. So the question would then become, how could the ECEC programming be adapted? And the way that we've talked already, even in the task force, and the ECEC's on this task force, is that there may be a parent that says, you know what, I do want my kid to go to school, but I'm really not ready for them to go full day, so maybe there's a half-day option that ECEC could offer that they don't currently offer. And then, you know, potentially open up more slots that way. So that is certainly a consideration that we're looking at and having, because you don't wanna duplicate something or offer something and then say, oh, they're paying for that, and then you're offering the same program for free. So, that is just one piece, that we're talking about, and it's a really good question, so.
Mrs., or Dr. Ruskin?
You can tell me whatever you want. Has the task force thought about, will this open up opportunity for more, I guess probably not 2-year-olds, but 3 and 4-year-olds, because I know that program gets filled and it comes to capacity, and then we don't even have enough space for families in our community that want preschool.
It's a great question, and I think that is an opportunity, right? So you could say, well, if we're gonna not have that particular room taken with an early fives program, we could now run an additional preschool program, or, you know, fill in the blank,
More
or a
classrooms.
GSRP or something like that, whatever the need is. And I think that's gonna increasingly become true as we build the 6th grade house. You know that we're going to be moving some of our early childhood special education programming into that facility, which will free up some space over there as well. So all of this is kind of working together synergistically to create an environment where there'll be more opportunities to offer those slots to our resident families.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Mrs. Rooney?
Hi, with the early, like the fives program, would they go to like the elementary school? We'd offer it at all of our elementaries. So like if they're in the Village Oaks area, they would go there.
The goal would be that every single building would be able to have at least a section, which would exactly do what you just described. One of the things that's really important to the teachers on the task force, and we talked a lot about it, is the fact that you're building that kind of school excitement around, you know, I'm coming to this school, and so I have that opportunity to, you know, be a part of my school, you know, just a little bit earlier and all of that kind of thing. So it's gonna depend on logistics and numbers, right? I mean, obviously, that's gonna drive some of this. So assuming that there's enough interest and we have the need of kids that fall within this age range, we would likely be able to hopefully offer one at each building. You know, obviously, if it's something where there's not as many kids, then you would be looking at regionally across the district saying, okay, could we offer one at, you know, say Parkview or Deerfield, and then one at Village Oaks, or, you know, how you're gonna try and accommodate the needs. So it's gonna depend on enrollment and numbers. But we're having these conversations now because we would like to really start to get out, you know, early March, late February, and start talking with our community about what options are available for kindergarten and this next fall. So, but it is an exciting time.
Awesome, thank you.
Mrs. Baudouin?
Thank you. So first, I wanted to echo Dr. Ruskin's thoughts on the ECC capacity, because even when, what was it? I don't know, 5 years ago, when we were enrolled there was like a day you had to go and enroll at the exact moment enrollment opened, or you would not have your spot. So I do not personally foresee any issues with them filling even more classrooms, so I would love to give them the opportunity to do that. I think the other thing for me is that with this Young Fives program, I think it is going to offer a lot of our families some really great advantages, because, and I think it'll help our teachers a lot too, because I do think there's a number of children who are enrolled in kindergarten when they're kind of on the edge of being ready, because childcare is so expensive. And so I think this is gonna give a great option where they can begin learning kindergarten, they can do it at a slightly slower pace, so they're not gonna have to like show up and be able to like read the second week, or whatever kind of urgency seems to accompany kindergarten at this point. So I love this idea, and I love that it will have options for families to put their kid in a spot that's gonna work really well for them, in some situations. So I think this will be very, very good, and I love the idea of trying to give our teachers a little opportunity to know the students and develop a good sense of what those individual kids need as they're creating those placements, because I do think that's gonna help balance classes and have a more peaceful environment for everyone to learn. So I'm very excited about all of these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other follow-up. So the scenario under this revision with the early fifths would be if your child is 5 before September before September 1st, straight up kindergarten like normal. If they're 5 after December 1st, you gotta wait. It's just the rules. And if they're in that middle period, you would still do the waiver process, but that waiver process would have them in the early fifths program by default. So the waiver process would change. It wouldn't be a waiver into kindergarten, it'd be a waiver into the early fifths.
It would still be based on the kindergarten standards, that's the way the statute reads. So the course is still going to be coded as a kindergarten level, but that's the back end kind of legal answer.
Sure.
But you're 100% correct that they would still complete a waiver, right? But the placement that they would have would be into the early 5 program, whatever the title of it is. I think the team is working on some really creative, fun, cool titles that are different than what I'm saying. But, you know, the point is that they would come up with a way to basically, yes, they'd fill out a waiver, but they would go into this, that's their version of kindergarten, right? And then depending on the numbers, because it was really gonna be predicated on how many kids fall within that age range that sign up, we would then be looking at, okay, almost like a lottery, we have space at Deerfield. Do parents whose children have birthdays in August have any interest in opting in, right? And then you kind of have that selection process. So that's part of the kind of scheduling challenges that we'll have to work out on logistics, but it seems to me that we will have close to a classroom of students just with the existing kids we have at, you know, if you look at like a year-to-year baseline.
Okay. I appreciate this, like you, we put our kids through a program similar to this, and when we were first considering it, the response we got back is nobody has ever not been thankful that they've done it. And it's true, and it was the best thing for our kids, because they do fall within that time frame. And it's amazing just what that 6 months will do for their social interactions, their emotional development. So I really appreciate that we are considering this. Also because I've known teachers in other districts who have gotten these kids early and not having a balanced classrooms where one classroom will end up with 6 of these kids and another classroom will only have 1 or 2. It really weighs on that teacher that ends up with those extra kids. And your ideas of being able to lottery or draft students in the kindergarten will help out, and it even that will release a lot of the burden that's on the teachers. So once again, thank you for coming up with some innovative ideas to solve some of the problems we have, and so that our teachers are getting the support they need to educate the kids.
Absolutely.
So,
It's
appreciate
a lot of fun.
Okay, let's move on to our action items. The first action item is personnel report. Mr. Micah.
Yeah, thank you. We have a couple new additions to the Wildcat family. I'll turn it over to Dr. Carino.
Thank you. Tonight, we are eager to bring forward 4 extremely qualified educators. Samantha Levitan is being recommended as the school social worker at Parkview. Samantha has previously worked as a school social worker in Avondale. Lindsay McClintock is being recommended tonight for the district ELD interventionist position. She has previous experience serving as a model teacher, assistant principal, and dean of curriculum and assessment. We also recommend Jessica Noruk as a special education self-contained teacher at Novi High School. Jessica recently completed her student teaching in Saline and graduated from EMU last year. She has worked as both a guest paraprofessional and teacher prior to coming to Novi. Additionally, we recommend Starlet Braggs for a special education paraprofessional position at Novi Meadows. Starlet has previously worked as an assistant recruiter, account services specialist, and closing sales coordinator. She has been involved with the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Metropolitan Detroit. Finally, we have 1 resignation and retirement this evening. Mira Call will be resigning from her school social work position. Colleen Ponte will be retiring from her speech and language pathologist position at the end of the school year, and we thank her very much for her service to Novi since 2015. With that said, that concludes tonight's personnel report.
Thank you. Can I get a recommendation? Mrs. Roney?
That the Novi Community School District Board of Ed adopts a personnel report recommended as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mrs. Roney, supported by Mrs. Beaudoin. Do we have any questions and comments?
Oh, welcome. Thank you for your hard work, and do we have some of the people here this evening? Awesome, well, we're looking forward to meeting them, but thank you for all your hard work.
I would like to say thank you to Mrs. Ponte. She's only been here since 2015, but she has made a big impact wherever she's been, and appreciate the work she's done with the students with their speech and language. So that is not an easy job, and sometimes the cues that they have to pick up on are difficult. So appreciate her work that she's done over the years, and hopefully we can find somebody to fill those big shoes. So, okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Appreciate those that have come, and if, Dr. Pino, if we could introduce them and.
Absolutely. We are very excited to welcome Samantha Levitan.
Hi, my name is
If you could come up to the podium, and we'll even get you on camera.
Hi, my name is Samantha Levitan. I'm going to be the new social worker at Parkview Elementary. I'm extremely excited. A little bit about me, I went to Central Michigan for my bachelor's and then Wayne State for my master's. During my time at Wayne State, I was in the Children's Hospital in the oncology outpatient clinic, and I was an intern there, and I learned so much. Following that, I took a little bit of time off to focus on myself, and then I went back to school for my school of social work. And after that, I started my career at Avondale, and as much as I'm sad to say goodbye, I saw an opportunity here at Novi to grow professionally and personally, and I'm really excited to start, and I look forward to meeting all the students and staff.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
welcome.
Last but not least, we have Starlet Braggs.
Hi, everybody. My name is Starlet Braggs. I went to school for Eastern Michigan University. I have 2 business degrees. I have a work history in sales, recruiting, staffing, and customer service. Why I chose to work with kids. This is my first role as a paraprofessional, second day at the 5th grade building. It's been a great experience, and I just believe that and recognize the power in basically empowering kids and the importance of education, what it does for kids as they grow into adults. And then also personally, I had a lot of great educators and instructors that poured into me, so I see the benefit and value in it as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
and
thank you.
welcome. Okay, let's move on to board meeting and committee of the whole schedule.
Yeah, so this is a document that we reviewed at our last meeting in December. Took into account a variety of board requests. Couple things of note, we did add a board self-assessment. I know Mr. Mishner had talked about desire to bring that back onto the schedule. We also want to make note that for most of the meetings, these meetings are going to be starting at 6 o'clock. So I know we've talked about that a couple times, obviously the time change. One thing of note as well, we added a little bit more to the calendar this year, so that people that are planning can plan a little further out than just the simple calendar year. And of course, if the board needs to make adjustments to this calendar, we can certainly bring it back for a vote at a later time. But this allows people to generally plan longer and further out. Additionally, the committee of the whole schedule, moving all of those meetings to Thursdays gives the board that consistency as discussed at the last meeting as well. So the calendar and committee of the whole meeting dates and schedule is there for your consideration and approval this evening.
Thank you. Can we get a recommendation? Mr. Mitchell.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2024-2025 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Mitchner, supported by Mrs. Beaudoin. you have any questions, comments, and Mr. Smith?
It may not impact me, but I see on, in 2025, on June 12th, we've got the career prep graduation at 6, as we do this June. Our board meeting is slated to start at 7:30. On the calendar for the year 2025, we have the board meeting slated to start at 6:30. I don't think that's enough time.
Should make it 7:30 like this next year.
Whatever you guys want, I'll be watching.
Nice,
From
catch.
afar.
Thank you for catching that.
So you can, just make an adjustment to that particular one. I don't know if you want to make a motion specific to that or.
Yeah, why don't we make a motion specific to that, and then we'll vote on Mr. Mitchner.
I move we amend the calendar to have the board meeting start at the later time, as trustee Smith mentioned, at 7:30 on June 11th of 2025.
June 12th.
12th.
June 12th of 2025.
Thank you.
Support.
It's supported by Mrs. Beaudoin. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All opposed? Amendment passes 7-0. So now we have to vote on the original recommendation, which would be with the amended date, so. Anybody have any questions or other questions or comments on that? Okay. Call to order. All those in favor?
We need a motion.
Aye.
No, we already had a motion on that
So
one.
we did that.
Yes. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Calendar passes 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to designate depositories and for school funds. Mr. Michael.
Every year, annually, the board is required to designate their depositories for school funds. This also includes designating members who will be signing for the district, also those that are going to be determining various fees. It also determines and classifies who our law firm is and who will be representing us in these matters, as well as other depositories. That document is there for your review and approval as presented.
Do I recognize Mr. Smith?
Sure, I move that the Novi Community Schools Board of Education accepts the designated depositories for school funds as presented.
Support. Moved by Mr. Smith, supported by Mr. Mena. Have any questions, Mr. Mitchner?
Just one comment. I would like to see if we could investigate moving one of our accounts to a local credit union and reinvest in the Novi community as such. I think that would be a really good partnership, since the credit unions in Novi tend to give so much back to the school district. I think that would be a good mutual experience.
Investigate that. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to our superintendent report.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. It's been, it was a wonderful break, I think, for most people, being in most of the buildings since we've returned this week. It's nice to see people a little bit recharged. Obviously, think people feel like it's nice to, step away for a little bit. Hopefully people had some family time. I will say this is the time of year where everybody's clamoring. I get about 20 or 30 emails a day from students, basically requesting snow days. And I had a lot of them on the national championship game, which was one of my highlights was obviously watching the Wolverines win a national title, but also reading the tremendously creative, persuasive essays that our students submit about why it would be so beneficial to them to have a snow day. But in all seriousness, we do see some impending weather coming. I'm on weather calls usually with meteorologists. It looks like there's a pattern that's coming in tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon. It probably will not affect us for school, but I just want to make sure everybody understands we do have some protocols that are in place. And one of the things that I think is really exciting, talking with Mr. Kling and Mr. Dragoo, we're going to present kind of an operational protocol for establishing different levels of closure that will help make it a little easier for parents as well as for staff and the community to know. So a level 1 would be all facilities are closed through the whole day. You know, a different level might be that we have, you know, after school activities going, but the school day is closed, you know, and so being able to create that transparency with when we do that. So appreciative of Mr. Dergu and his leadership in that. So we're gonna be bringing that forward soon and communicating it. But snow days are upon us, so please make sure everybody has their name and correct phone number accurately displayed. We do have a real cold front coming in next week, so it's gonna be very cold. And just so you know, once it gets to -10 with the wind chill factor, we really start looking at how long a student could be outside without frostbite and so on. So believe it or not, I'm up very, very early most days this time of year, just trying to figure out from, you know, the various partners on whether or not it's gonna be safe for school. But exciting time for the kids for sure. I will say, we also had something interesting, and this is a signal to the way that the state operates sometimes, but we just recently received the pupil accounting manual for this school year. And when I say this school year, which we're basically halfway through, we received the manual of how we're supposed to operate it for this school year. You hopefully can't read too far into that to know that it's obviously late getting that information, but one of the things that's nice about it is that it does allow for us, and Mr. Jeremini talked about this in December, it allows for us to be able to go virtual on a particular day, okay? And that, if we were to go virtual, still be able to count it as a school day if we meet certain requirements. We think that that's gonna have a lot of utility and flexibility for, say, testing at the high school and other times where it may benefit us to be able to do that. So that will require board action, and so Mr. Jeremini is investigating that with his team, and we will be coming back likely with a suggested amount of dates that we might want to utilize that to our advantage as a district. And getting people notice as much as possible is always our goal. I also wanna say that we have bid out our owner's rep services for the 2025 bond program. We did take bids, we had interest from several companies. We did have one bidder that decided to submit a bid. And I think that it's gonna be a great opportunity for us to continue working with one of our partners. But it's just kind of another acknowledgement to the fact that we are bidding out a lot of our partners. Everything from all of the partners that we're gonna work with in the 2025 bond program, and our owner's representative will help us do that. So at our next week's meeting, we'll bring the results of that bid. Gonna ask for your approval, and when that occurs, then they can start helping us bid out some of those others. We are in the process of bidding out a variety of services. You know, our insurance programs and our property casualty insurance and all those things, these things all have a lot of impact in terms of our bottom line. And so we just wanna make sure we're making sure that the board knows that we're getting the best value and the best price and the best service. And so Devin and I have been working pretty closely on that, and that's been an ongoing project. Lastly, I'll just say that strategic planning, I know that we've taken a little bit of a hiatus since December. I'll be bringing back some additional information next week. Looking like I'll probably be coming to the February board meeting with something and asking for your approval so that we can start, you know, that plan and get that plan off the ground. So thank you for all your support, Happy New Year, and welcome back everybody in the district.
Thank you. Brings us to our administrative reports, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Welcome back. Happy New Year. I just have two things, so I'll try to be quick. I don't want to be long-winded. The CREC is tomorrow at 9 a.m. So that's really exciting stuff. For
Like your Super Bowl.
It's the kickoff. So for those of you that don't know, the CREC stands for the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference. And it is exactly what it sounds like. So what they do is they present in regards to the U.S. economy, the state economy, and kind of how that reflects our state revenue. And so the CREC is in January, and then they have another one in the spring, late spring. And the January CREC is really the kickoff to the 24-25 budget season. So we're gonna
get a sneak peek of what revenues look like and what we can expect come spring, because that's going to be here before you know it. The other thing is Truman Law Firm is currently drafting the legal documents needed to initiate the third series of the 2019 bonds. So that's going to be going to you next week for information and discussion, and then again in February for action. That's all I have.
Thank you. Dr. Carino?
Thank you. This week, we had a very exciting second meeting for our Wellness Center planning, and so Rosalie Johnson, our Director of Mental Health and Wellness, led that work with our committee, and we solicited feedback on thoughts for what our Wellness Center should include and the partnerships that will be active at that location. And so we look forward to digesting that feedback from the session, as well as sending out a survey to families and staff in the coming weeks to garnish more information. So we're looking forward to that, and just glad to be back, and looking forward to a great 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carino. Mr. Jeremy?
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Just very briefly, those literacy materials for the pilots that you approved at our last meeting in December have begun arriving. Lots and lots and lots of materials. Our team is working to unbox and prepare, and we're really excited for our first set of teacher trainings next week, and those continue throughout January so that we can prepare for the start of the February pilot. So we're pretty excited.
Thank you. This brings us to board communications. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up or talk about? Mrs. Wang.
Thank you. Dr. Carino mentioned the Wellness Center collaborative meetings, and I was able to participate in that as well. And I just wanted to mention that that process, to me, seemed just amazingly thorough, and I think Rosalie is doing an amazing job leading us on this. We started out really looking at all of the different ways that people experience wellness and like what that term means, and then dove into what kind of options our community would have to offer to our students and families to increase their wellness in like a variety of different ways. So after I saw the legislation and what was slated to go into the space, I was kind of picturing it one way, and after that meeting, there's just so many more possibilities. And it was really, really an incredible thing to take part in, and so I was very honored to participate with that, and I think it will be very incredible to see the direction that we end up in, because at this point, we had, maybe 15 groups that brainstormed different ideas, and our group came up with like 20 or 30 different things that we thought maybe could happen here. And so I just keep going like, oh, I can't wait to see the whole list, because there's gonna be so many ideas. And then when I went home that night, I talked to my kids, and they had other ideas of things that I sent over to Rosalie and was like, hey, like this would be cool too, and this is gonna be an enormous list. So I'm very excited to see what we choose to prioritize and what ways we can help increase the general wellness and mental health of our community, because I think it's really an incredible opportunity for us. So thank you for bringing that up and for your participation with it as well.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm just gonna be
Mrs.
student
Becker.
voice for 1 minute. So just to clarify, we're not gonna have virtual days on the snow day?
I'm glad that
Because I
you
can
asked
see
that
my
question.
teacher friends out there, and they were kind of looking at you with,
They didn't like that idea.
they did not
No.
like that
They
idea.
don't
So I'm
like that
just
idea.
saying
No,
that you and Mr.
So unless we
Jeremy
get
might-
to a point where, we run out of days, right? So let's say we
okay.
have a lot of blizzards. It's certainly more advantageous to take advantage of a virtual day than it is to repeat days in June, right? So that would be where it's at. But if it's within our allotted 5 to 6 days, we're good. There will be no virtual day.
Okay,
Okay?
just wanted to clarify. I didn't want anybody to be sending you
Didn't
hate
want- I don't
mail
wanna be the
over
fun
the next
governor.
24 hours, yeah.
That was very good of you to think
Yeah,
of that.
absolutely.
And was what you were saying regarding virtual days, was that like if we have the, some grade in high school is doing testing, then we could run that day virtually or something like that, where maybe it would be to accommodate certain circumstances?
Right, so we have to hit a certain number of days and hours in the pupil accounting manual in order to be able to count, our school year calendar as being kosher. So as you know, our calendar is a combination of collective bargaining with our teachers as well as the board, But, this would allow for us to open up additional flexibility for testing days, days that we may need to not be in the buildings, that could be scheduled in advance. It's not really designed for, oh, you're gonna take a snow day, let's use a virtual day. The board really has to adopt a calendar for that, but, it's just giving us some flexibility, and I think we have some ideas on how we might use that. So, like I said, Mr. Jeremy's team's working on it, and we're gonna bring that forward at our next meeting.
I think that's great, and generally speaking, I think that snow days do increase the wellness of our students, and we should continue to support that whenever possible.
That's good.
All in favor?
They would agree 100%.
They sure would, yeah.
Teachers as well.
Anybody else? I will just say that, today and tomorrow is rivalry week, basically, for Novi and that, Orange School down south. The freshman boys, held up their end of the bargain, pulled out a 34-33 win. The JV boys weren't doing so well when I left, but, I haven't heard about the girls and had a chance to check, but, I think we have a very good chance this year of, holding on to some, bragging points. I would also like to welcome again our new employees, as well as our seasoned veterans. We appreciate you coming and, giving us some attention, and, with that, I think, we are complete. Unless Mr. Kling wants to open another spreadsheet, because I'm pretty sure that's why he's diving into all this stuff. He wants to.
Maybe he could tell us more about that very exciting Super Bowl thing. That
right.
sounds,
It's fun.
It's in person in Lansing, but I can send you a link if you want.
you know, if you could, I don't think I can make it, but maybe I can listen in.
I'm just saying.
I'd love
You
to
see it,
hear
watch
more.
it online.
But I'll take the link.
All right, I'll send it.
I mean, yeah.
Kraken?
Anyway.
Okay, appreciate it. So,
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Roney. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And stay. Thank you. We are now adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Cook. Great job.
Okay, Laura.